Now, one of the things that I did in the previous tutorial that I didn't really talk about was on the door, I managed to play around with the vertices and move them around. And so I think it's worthwhile to just quickly talk about, in a very basic way, some of the different component types in Maya. So to do this, we're just going to start by creating a polygon cube. All right, so something really basic we just throw right at the center there. I'm going to get rid of my grid. All right, so this has just got 6 sides to it, and very, very basic geometry. So there are 3 different kind of component types that we need to be aware of. There are the faces, obviously, right? There are the edges that define the faces, and then there are the little points at the end of each edge, which are known as the vertices. Well, vertices is plural, singular is vertex. So to get to being able to modify these individual different types of components, what we need to do is right-click on our model. And from this context menu, we have the ability to choose face, or edge, or vertex. So if I start out with face, and I hover over my object, I could select a face and then move it. You can see that that's going to actually physically change the object. I could rotate it, and that will produce its own change like that, or I could scale it. All right, and we get a likewise change there. Edges, right? This allows me, this is kind of a bit of a smaller change, but it does allow me to do a big shift in the object's shape overall, right? I can rotate those or scale those as well, right? So faces and edges, really easy to get a big change. Now, the component that I end up playing around with the most, though, is usually the vertex. And this only allows me to move it. I can't do any rotation or scaling. It doesn't make any sense to do so because it's only a one-dimensional point. But if I select multiple vertices, I can effectively make some pretty big changes. I can move them closer together. I can scale 2 of them together at the same time, and what that does is it physically just puts them closer together as if I translated it, right? And so this is a way that we can start actually modeling something. So there's a couple different ways that we could get started by adding extra geometry onto our object. In the case of a cube or any one of the primitive objects that we have, if we haven't made any changes yet, what we can come down to in the channel box is the input section. And right now, if we look at this, there's an options for subdivisions. And if I changed all the subdivisions to something like 2, now what it's doing is it's giving me extra geometry in each one of these directions. If I change it if I change this to 3, right, I can get basically a Rubik's Cube, right? I only changed one of these directions, for instance, maybe subdivision width, say leave it 1, then it's only going to give me the extra subdivisions in the other axes. So let's just keep this at 333 at the moment. Now let's pretend that we want to move around just this face here. If I move that out, obviously I start getting a nose. Let's just pretend that this is like a head and this becomes our nose, right? But what if I want to leave behind the rest of these faces here and just pull this one out? Well, the operation to do that would be what's called extrude. And we can find that by going to modeling menu, edit mesh, extrude. Now let's go to the extrude options real quick. So if I go to the extrude options and I choose the defaults, I'll just reset the settings and choose the defaults, and I hit apply, what this is going to allow me to do once I enable the extrude is just pull out this face. It leaves behind the previous one and it pulls out this face. Everything else just gets left behind. I could go ahead and scale that down or rotate it, and I could continue to extrude from this if I wanted to. Right? And this way I'm starting to actually get some kind of new shape. It's like a trunk or a proboscis. If I wanted to change the way that this tool is being used, for instance, right now you'll notice that the translate options and the whole tool itself is currently set to be perpendicular to the, or I should say parallel to the normal of the face itself. If I click on this little button here, this will change between world mode and local mode. World mode just keeps it consistent with the axes, the world axes, right? And sometimes it's important to go back and forth between these two depending on your modeling needs. In this case, it doesn't really matter. It's probably easier to be this way at local mode. So generally speaking, I don't necessarily need to go into the uh, the options whenever I create an extrusion. I just usually hit the extrude option. In fact, my little shortcut for doing this is shift right click and extrude face. And that will pull that out there. And I do get this little extra gizmo on the side here. You can ask me how thick do I want this to be, in which case I could type in a value and that's going to affect how much it gets pulled out. Local translate Z, if I change that to something like 6 there. This is sort of between thickness and local translate, you might get a different result, so I'm not going to necessarily deal with that. I tend to work with just thickness in general. Offset, notice if I can click, basically if I hover over the word, I can left mouse click and drag and it's going to change the value. You can kind of start seeing what you get by doing this. Divisions, hover over that, you can see that it starts to subdivide what's been pulled out here. And keep faces together on versus off. Now this is interesting. And the only way we're going to really see what this does is if we go up here to select multiple faces. Shift right click, extrude face. Keep faces together is currently on. If I pull this up, then let's see what happens if I turn this off. At the moment, it doesn't seem to be making much difference. All right, let's put it back to on, and let's go ahead and scale these. All right. Notice how they do stay together. If I turn this off, I do get a different result when I try to scale these. Especially if I go down in this direction here, it becomes particularly noticeable where they each get treated like a separate face. In this case, they were actually overlapping each other here. And so this is a way to get, I guess, individual peaks if you wanted to. You could then go ahead and treat each one of these separately. So eventually you start creating a big, crazy object like this. So extrusion is one of the ways that you can go and add some more shape changes. And if you need to add some more geometry in specific locations, another feature I often use is to shift right click on my object and choose the Insert Edgeloop tool. And this will try to create a loop that is halfway between the shape of this loop and this loop, if I drag along this edge, right? In which case it's really easy to calculate that because the shape is identical. Let me just go ahead and let's say that I had an edge that was down here like this and that one was way up in the air. If I went in and I chose, and let's just also go in and change the vertex position here, something like that. So if I were to go in and choose Insert Edge Loop tool now, you can see that it's trying to mimic halfway between that and that there to give me this point here. It goes all the way around. Another tool you can use is the mini cut tool. And what this allows you to do is go in and actually specify exactly where you want to cut on the faces. Now, what you got to be careful of is you do not want to end up just cutting a face and basically leaving it unresolved like this, right? So when we're modeling, we want to keep our faces either in quads, that is with 4 sides, or in triangles, that is with 3 sides. What I've done here now is these are quads. That's nice. That's all great. But this right here, even though it technically looks like a quad, it looks like a square, actually has 5 sides because I've left a open vertex there. And if I look around, I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can actually drag this. You can actually now better see that it's a 5-sided face, which is not good. It actually creates problems when I try to model, especially if you were to bring this into other software. Got the same issue here. So if you're using a tool like this, like the multi-cut tool, then my recommendation is wherever you can actually terminate this into maybe a triangle, then do so. So I would grab that there and maybe terminate it into a triangle here, right? So those are just some basic tools if you need to do some modifications to kind of get you started. Another thing to just be aware of is if I hit the 3 key now, I get this nice sort of smoothed out version of my model. 1 sets me back to the original. Going back to extrusions, and you got to be careful with this because this is really easy to do and it will mess you up. If I go back to my extrude face and I accidentally don't move it, right? I just leave it behind. So there. And then I extrude face again. It won't look like there's any problem here until I hit the 3 key. And this isn't looking too bad at the moment, but I was hoping to maybe see a better example here. Let me try doing it off of here. Let's just say we will extrude face there. And I'm just going to extrude face again so that I left behind this, this one face I didn't actually pull out. And we'll continue to extrude. Pull that one over there, something like that. All right, hit 3. Generally speaking, I get something that looks a bit weird, and I'm not actually getting that right now. I'm trying to trying to force something to happen, but it's not really happening. What has ended up happening, though, is there would be left inside here a face that is sitting on top of other faces, like 2 faces simultaneously sitting on top of each other. And occasionally, as you model things, you'll find that that creates a weird shape, something unexpected. We're not really quite getting that here, and I can't seem to force it to happen. But just take my word for it. And if you run into that, just consider the fact that you might have an extrusion here which you accidentally didn't pull out. So we'll just leave it here for now. And in the next tutorial, we're just going to look at doing some stuff with texturing.